Hello, welcome to the GPP Ched Music Podcast. As you know, I'm Big Italy 42, and he is at BChad50, Josh Shepherdson. And we're here to help you out with your GPPs on FanDuel and DraftKings. We're going to give you the breakdown. You just made a comment right before we started about how there's some guys to consider in cash games, obviously, but all these pitchers pretty much in play for GPPs. By all, I mean all the guys we're about to mention, not all as in every, because a couple of these guys I wouldn't touch with a 39.5-foot pole. So,
yeah, sorry, Nick Martinez. We're not advocating using you in GPPs or any game for that matter. But
Nick Martinez can put himself in his own DraftKings lineup. I will be putting all the Orioles in the opposing lineup. But let's start off here at the top. And if we're talking expensive, guy that's expensive on both sides, Carlos Carrasco, $9,100 on FanDuel, really fair price. 10-2 on DraftKings, a little higher. But I mean, this one's pretty cut and dry. You look at it here. By far the highest strikeout rate of anybody on the board. The only guy that's kind of close is Vincent Velasquez, but he's only pitched 19 innings, so that doesn't really count. Lester, a full 4.1% behind him in strikeout rate. So, I mean, Carrasco, due to just that alone, probably has the highest upside tonight. We saw Danny Salazar have a great game against them last night. Not a lot of strikeouts. Tampa Bay not a team that strikes out a ton, but you expect Carrasco's going to pitch deep. You expect he'll probably get, 6-7 strikeouts, and little more prohibitive on DraftKings, I would say, because of his price. But, I mean, we know what this guy's capable of. And if you're looking at game logs and you're worried about his recent start against Tampa Bay, give up a 400 BABIP on that in that game. So, I mean, just well-placed hits. Not a whole lot of hard hits, but just balls that just kind of dropped in. So, I'm not concerned by that. And I think that he's one of my favorite pitchers on the board, if not my favorite.
Yeah, I think he has the highest ceiling of any starter going tonight. The Rays strike out in 21.2% of their plate appearances against righties this year, so they do strike out a bit. And Carrasco, obviously, monstrous strikeout potential. His FIP and XFIP are elite, even if his ERA is over 4. Really, he's just been getting killed by BABIP. He's done a much better job stranding runners of late. Finally got that left-on-base percentage rate above 70, so we're starting to see that correction there. So I love Carrasco tonight. I like Wei and Chen a bit. The Rangers really bad against left-handed pitching this year. Chen's quietly been very good. Sub-3 ERA is a little bit lucky, but his xFIP checks in under 4. Does not walk many batters. Strikes out at a healthy number of batters. Fly ball rate's a little bit alarming at Camden Yards. Not a lot of right-handed batters in that Rangers lineup to take advantage of him. And really, it's lefties that get the big boost at Camden Yards. So lefty-lefty matchup, gonna favor Chen. Has a sub-300 WOBA allowed to lefties since 2012. So like Chen a little bit. Like him better on multi-pitcher sites like DraftKings, I think, because I want to bolster him with a guy like Carrasco. But also, my favorite GPP play of the night tonight, and I won't say it's not close because there are a handful of others that I do like as well, but Jose Quintana against the Cardinals. Cardinals are lost against left-handed pitching this year, ranked near the bottom of the league in WOBA and WRC+, and they're striking out in about a quarter of their plate appearances against lefties this year. So they are really struggling. Their best hitters are left-handed, guys like Matt Carpenter and Colton Wong. So you're going to get the platoon advantage there with Quintana. Weird strikeout rate for him this year. It's actually gone down from last year, despite the fact the swinging strike rate has gone up substantially. So there's going to be some correction. Probably going to start tonight. Gets to go to a National League ballpark, so he gets to face a pitcher. So I really like Quintana. I even though he's an underdog, I don't think he needs the win to deliver on his price point on either FanDuel or DraftKings. Capable of striking out possibly a batter per inning and giving you 7 innings of 2 earned run baseball or less. And you get 10 to 14 points from your starting pitcher at his price on FanDuel. You're pretty happy with that. And doesn't allow a ton of base runners, so you're not going to get dinged by hits and walks on DraftKings either. So really like Quintana. Another name in that cheap price point that I like is Chris Heston against the Marlins. Marlins obviously a much less imposing lineup without Giancarlo Stanton. Heston does struggle with left-handed batters, but you don't have a ton of scary left-handed bats in the Marlins lineup. As you pointed out before the podcast, they do have a handful. They're probably going to have about 4 in the lineup. Justin Bour, Derek Dietrich, D. Gordon, and Christian Yelich. Of those, really, Yelich is the one that scares me the most, but not a huge power threat. Hits a lot of ground balls, so I love Heston as a ground ball pitcher. And the fact that he is a betting favorite, and he is so cheap on DraftKings, just $6,500. You can pair him with Carrasco and do a lot with your bats there. So those are my favorite names in GPPs. Who else are you looking at?
Well, I'll tell you who I'm not looking at. Another reason why I'm on board with you with Chris Heston is he does get to he is opposed by Dan Herron, who I expect most nights to give up, about 1,000 earned runs because I just think he's terrible. But an interesting option for me here is John Lackey. It's not that he's an overpowering pitcher, and he's certainly not a dominant pitcher, but he's shown upside at times. I mean, this White Sox lineup is just god awful. Like, they're just terrible. I don't know what else you can really say about this team. Obviously, we know they're the worst team against lefties, and it's not particularly close. But when you look at their numbers against righties, they're not too good either. I mean, they don't strike out as much, 19.4%, but 25th in the league, 123 team ISO. I mean, they're just bad. And I think Lackey, due to his price point, nearly $9K on FanDuel, over $9K on DraftKings, going to be low owned, but we've seen him. Minnesota, a similar offense to the White Sox as far as numbers against righties there. And he put up 26.4 DraftKings points against them. We saw him dominate the Dodgers somehow in St. Louis, go 34.2. So he's got upside, and I do think he'll be low owned because of that price. So I think he's an interesting option. And then, once again, targeting a lefty against Detroit sounds scary because they are one of the top teams in the league against lefties, but they also strike out a ton against lefties. If you look at the numbers over here, they, I believe, are the fourth highest WOBA against left-handed pitchers, but they also strike out. I lost it now. Oh, they strike out seventh highest, 23.5% against lefties. They do walk 10% of the time, so that takes away a little bit there. But A.J. Burnett's done a good job at limiting walks, 6.8% walk rate. And a lot of the strength of the Tigers is home runs. But you look at A.J. Burnett, and A.J. Burnett does not allow home runs, 0.27 home runs per 9, which actually among qualified pitchers is the best in the entire league, just ahead of Tyson Ross. So lowest home run rate against a team that strikes out a lot, but they hit lefties for power. Something's got to give there, and I think that no one's going to really be on Burnett because he is facing the Tigers, but I think he's a really good GPP option.
Getting back to Lackey, he is a guy that I like as well. You don't often get a betting favorite like that with low ownership, and there's not a lot of big betting favorites tonight. Chen checking in is the biggest, but we don't have anybody even at the minus 200 mark tonight. So Lackey checks in as a good favorite. I actually think it's a viable strategy to pair both he and Quintana on DraftKings, get a couple of quality starts in what figures to be a pitcher's duel, and load up on bats. So I do like Lackey. I think he is more likely to get the win than Quintana. That's what happens when you've got a team as a betting favorite like the Cardinals. It just makes sense. The odds makers obviously like him, but I think both are very much in play. And as you noted, White Sox don't strike out a bunch, but again, that's an American League ballpark, so that I would expect them to be a little bit more punch-out prone tonight with Quintana batting instead of a designated hitter. You're going to be losing Adam LaRoche out of that lineup, which is a sizable bite take out of a lineup that lacks really much offensive upside at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then outside of that, John Lester, you got to mention him. The Mets, right around league average against left-handed pitching, and 99 WRC plus. You pointed that out to me earlier, but they also have the sixth highest strikeout rate against lefties at 23.6%. Another scary thing for him, though, 1.61 ISO for this team against lefties. So Lester's been that guy that we know that he's better than he's been pitching, but he's just still has just not been very good for the most part this year. Last game he got hit hard early by the Dodgers, but he also has 7 walks in his last 2 games. So concerning, especially against a Mets team that walks over 8% of the time. So he's a good tournament option for me, and but probably not a guy that I'll have a ton of, especially on DraftKings. He's the most expensive pitcher, but on FanDuel, you get a little bit of a discount there. 4th most expensive pitcher, only $8,600. So I think that he's a viable option on FanDuel and GPPs.
Yeah, and if you're chasing strikeout upside, as you noted, the Mets do strike out quite a bit against lefties, so there is definitely some merit to using some Lester shares.
Absolutely, and I think that's going to do it for pitcher unless you got somebody else.
Nope, that's going to do it.
All right, catcher. I love Buster Posey. Not only just because I hate Dan Herron, and I maybe I shouldn't use the H word. I'm trying to teach my son not to use that. But either way, Buster Posey, he's hitting right now like an MVP, doing what we expected him to do earlier this season. I mean, the rundown of his logs and RBIs in his last 10. RBIs, 1, 3, 2, 0, 3, 4, 0, 0, 1, 4. Like, not only is he getting big hits, he's getting clutch hits. He's just getting on base, and he's been just incredibly successful recently. 4,400 on FanDuel, 46 on DraftKings. I think he's in play in all formats. I know he's expensive, but you're not paying a ton for pitching tonight. So I think that Buster Posey is a guy that if I'm paying up at a place where people don't like to pay up, I mean, Buster Posey's going to be pretty contrarian at this point too.
That's the key for me. You'll see some people chase the home run from last night, but catcher's such a popular position to punt that anytime you get Posey at a low ownership against a bad right-handed pitcher, I like to do it because I just think he's going to be under-owned based on the whole mindset of punting catcher. Like, everybody wants to pay at first base and outfield, and you punch your catcher and you punch your shortstop. Well, Buster Posey's an elite hitting catcher. He's better against lefties than righties, but he gets Heron, and Heron's actually been worse against righties over the last 3 years than against lefties. He is exhibiting a more traditional platoon split this year, but Posey, excellent hitter. Don't be worried about Marlins Park. It does suppress home runs, but it actually inflates run scoring and doubles and triples for right-handed batters. So I do like Posey there. As I said, I do think you're going to see some people gravitate towards him because of the home run he hit last night, but I still expect him to be lowish owned based on the fact that he is pricey and he does play catcher. So I like Posey. I really like Jonathan Lucroy on both FanDuel and DraftKings if you're looking to pay down off of Posey. Gets a awesome ballpark factor for home runs for right-handed batters at Citizens Bank Park. Faces Aaron Harang, who is more susceptible against lefties than righties, but isn't exactly overpowering or imposing for right-handed batters. Lucroy hasn't really rounded into form just yet. Missed some time, was on the disabled list, and just hasn't quite gotten it going. But over his he has reached base in 5 straight games, so I do think that he might be snapping out of that funk. Has a great lineup spot, and we know that Harang's been pitching above his skis this year, so I don't mind targeting him. And a guy that I love in GPPs is Wellington Castillo. Crushes left-handed pitching. Probably going to hit around 6th in the Diamondbacks lineup tonight. In addition to crushing lefties, he gets great ballpark factors at Chase Field. Anderson does a really good job of keeping the ball on the ground, but it's not like he's incapable of giving up home runs. I believe he's given up 6 this year, which isn't an alarming number by any stretch, but if you lift one of those sinker balls, it can go a long way, and I like Castillo as a cheap power chase at catcher tonight.
Yeah, I like that as well. And another guy I'm going to throw in is Brian McCann. Obviously, in Angel Stadium, it's not a place that you're really enthused about playing hitters, but Matt Shoemaker has serious problems with fly balls, so I like Brian McCann there. Got the platoon split, and facing a fly ball pitcher, I think that's a good spot for him as well. First base options, Paul Goldschmidt. We don't need to tell you about Paul Goldschmidt, but we will anyway. He's certainly in play. He always is. He's expensive on both sides, but he may very well be worth it. In a matchup against a lefty and Brett Anderson at home in the hot air. The roof was closed last night, and it should be again tonight. But he also is 7 for 11 in his matchups with Brett Anderson with 2 home runs and I believe it's 5 extra base hits. So, I mean, if we're talking about Timmy Lincecum and how Paul Goldschmidt owns him, no, I'm sorry, it's not 5 extra base hits. It's 7 for 11 with 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, and 2 extra base hits. But also hasn't struck out. I mean, this is a guy that obviously has Brett Anderson's number. He's got the number for most lefties, but he's going to be your top option. I love Albert Pujols in tournaments. I know Nathan Eovaldi better against righties than he is against lefties. Still an average pitcher in my book. And Albert Pujols is the guy who's having a great season, but he's got a really low BABIP too. So some unlucky scenario for him too. So I really like his upside tonight as well.
I'll add Anthony Rizzo to the mix. I like that. I'm still a big fan of the Paul Goldschmidt Light nickname that you said Scott coined for him. Yep. I like it. He gets Cologne. Cologne's throwing about 86% fastballs. You're not going to fool Rizzo throwing a fastball 86% of the time, especially a sub 90 mile per hour fastball. Rizzo should feast on that. And he offers a nice discount from Goldschmidt. I'm with you, though. Got to get some Goldschmidt shares in GPPs. Even with the cheap pitching, you'll still see some people steer away from Goldie just because he is so expensive. You get that sticker shock. You get guys that are just like, oh, I can spend my money elsewhere. Well, Goldie's ceiling is unmatched. But if I am spinning down lower, I do like Rizzo. And then I don't mind Kendrys Morales of the Royals. Vincent Velasquez has worked around his walk issues in the big leagues by striking batters out. Royals are the hardest team in baseball to strike out, so gonna be a long night, I believe, for Velasquez. And with Eric Hosmer possibly missing another game, you can see Morales hitting cleanup, so that's not a bad spot to grab him. And also like Ryan Howard in GPPs. While we love the ballpark factor for homers for right-handed batters at Citizens Bank Park, pretty good for lefties too. Kyle Loesch struggles to keep the ball, doesn't keep the ball on the ground well at all, and really struggling with the long ball this year. So you got to like Ryan Howard at home. Hits righties better than lefties. Does have the potential to reach the seats. So I like Howard as a nice cheap play if you're looking to spend heavily elsewhere.
Yeah, I'll throw out one more cheap guy for you as well. Justin Bour. He's 2,300 on FanDuel, 28 on DraftKings. Not a guy that's going to get you a bunch of hits, but he's got a ton of power at home. When you mentioned Chris Hessen has some struggles with lefties, so I think he's a good cheap option if you're not going with Howard. But I think Howard might have a little bit of ownership tonight. But either way, both those guys are going to fly under the radar. Big power bats you can get in there in your tournaments. Second base options here. I love Jason Kipnis. Probably more of a GPP than cash game play because he is tough to fit because there are some other big names you're going to want to get in there. So gotta love him. Some other options. Justin Turner gets a lefty. Robbie Ray. You'll probably see some of him in cash games. Obviously, Dodger's been very popular recently, so he's a good guy. And then throw out my other favorite guy, as he generally is at home against an average or slightly above average pitcher. Luis Valbuena gets Edison Volquez tonight. Ton of power. We know all this guy does is hit the ball hard. Well, he either hits it hard or misses it completely. But when he hits it hard.
Yep. Speaking of hard hitters, gotta like Jimmy Paredes switch hitting against Nick Martinez. Martinez has really been very lucky this year. Walking too many batters, not striking anyone out. That's not going to fly at Camden Yards. What might fly is the baseball out of the ballpark. So I like Jimmy Paredes hitting left-handed against a right-handed Martinez tonight. Should get a favorable lineup spot. Probably going to hit second in front of Adam Jones tonight. Gotta like being sandwiched between Manny Machado and Adam Jones. Pretty nifty little lineup spot. Love Howie Kendrick. He's my favorite play at the Keystone position tonight. Price considered, great against left-handed pitching, great ballpark factors at Chase Field. Robbie Ray, another guy who, while he hasn't been as lucky as Nick Martinez, he has done very good things in terms of throwing strikes, decent passable strikeout rate, but his xFIP and FIP do indicate that he has been lucky this year. Like Joe Panic better on DraftKings than FanDuel, just $3,600 on DraftKings. We like picking on Dan Herron on the podcast, and for good reason. Right-handed batters have done very well for the Giants, the Giants have done very good against right-handed pitchers because they have so many left-handed batters in their lineup. Herron exhibiting that more traditional platoon split this year and getting hammered by lefties. So like Panic hitting out of the 2-hole for the Giants tonight. And that's pretty much going to do it at second base. I would throw in Derek Dietrich maybe. Don't like the ballpark factor for homers at Marlins Park, but as Justin's mentioned, Heston struggles a bit with left-handed batter, so Dietrich in play, especially if he does get a promotion in the lineup tonight. We have seen him hit second at times for the Marlins. If he were to hit second, we'd like him a lot more, but if he continues to hit down order, he does have power, so there is some merit to chasing some thump there.
Yeah, and that's a perfect transition because he's a guy who is third base eligible on FanDuel, but second base eligible on DraftKings, and then a guy with both those as well. Matt Duffy, third base eligible on FanDuel, second and third on DraftKings. Really like him as a tournament option. Same reasons you just indicated there. He's got a decent price tag as well. And by decent, I mean he's very playable on DraftKings. Too pricey, really, on FanDuel, but that's what makes him an even more intriguing tournament option tonight. So with that being said, moving over to third base, gotta love Manny Machado. I don't see how you couldn't love Manny Machado. 43 on FanDuel, 45 on DraftKings, a fine price for him. A couple other guys to consider. Pedro Alvarez is only third base eligible, or first base eligible on FanDuel, but first and third on DraftKings. He's got some big upside against Alfredo Simon, who struggled against lefties, and Alvarez starting to look like a more competent hitter recently. Not just the Luis Valbuena type where it's into the seats or it's into the catcher's mitts. So I like him as a tournament play as well, especially on FanDuel where he's really cheap.
Yeah, again, another guy, speaking of cheaper on FanDuel, Mike Moustakas price jacked up to 4,200 on DraftKings, but only 2,800 on FanDuel. As I noted with Velasquez, he's really walked a fine line, struggling with his control, but masking it by striking batters out. That's not going to happen tonight against the Royals. Royals make for one of my favorite stacks tonight. Moustakas hitting in the 2-hole. Gotta like him against Velasquez. Gets a power lift at Minute Maid Park, so I'm in on Moustakas. Love Chris Bryant tonight at third base. Cheap on both, cheap relative to what we're used to seeing for Bryant on both FanDuel and DraftKings. $4,100 on DraftKings, 35 on FanDuel. You got to like a hitter with power that knows he's getting fed sub 90 mile per hour fastballs, and that's what Chris Bryant's going to get tonight. I expect him to turn one around. I don't usually make my dong of the day call on the podcast, but we're going to do that right now, and we're going to say Chris Bryant takes Bart deep tonight. Speaking of hitters at third base who can take a pitcher deep, I like A-Rod at the Angels tonight, facing Shoemaker in that fly ball rate that he has. That's very high. A-Rod has the type of power that can take it out of any ballpark. I believe last check, his average home run and fly ball distance was 300 feet according to Baseball Heat Map. So top 20 in terms of average distance on fly ball. So you know he can go deep, not just a product of Yankee Stadium. So he's another guy that I like. Like him on DraftKings better than FanDuel because he is kind of hiding there at just $4,000 on DraftKings.
Yeah, great point there. Significant difference, really, when you consider the other guys around him. Shortstop options tonight. Once again, picking on Dan Herron. I like Brandon Crawford. I know you like him as well.
Yeah.
He's got semi-pricey on both sites, but rightfully so. He's been hitting the ball really well. Of course, you're considering Carlos Correa, who is hitting the ball as hard, if not harder, actually harder than anyone in the league now that Giancarlo Stanton is injured. So, gotta love him tonight. And then, there's not a whole lot of power here. So, J.J. Hardy is a guy that I like really in all formats to pick on. Nick Martinez, hitting the ball well. Not a ton of power, only 3 home runs. But he also hasn't played the entire season. So, I like his cheap price tag, $2,400 on FanDuel, $33 on DraftKings.
Yeah, this is primarily a punt position for me tonight, but if I'm not punting, the top name at the position for me and for you is Johnny Peralta. Gets a lefty in Jose Quintana. We do like Quintana, but Peralta is one of those few right-handed bats in the Cardinals lineup that is really scary to a certain extent. Peralta hits in a good lineup spot, has above average power, hits lefties better than righties. You name it, it's working in Peralta's favor, and he's priced fairly. Correa's expensive. You got to like the upside, but Peralta gives you some serious upside at a fraction of the cost, really. So I like Peralta, but I like the names that you mentioned. Beyond that, might go back to the Starlin Castro well again tonight. Again, I like these Cubbies hitters against Cologne in that predominant fastball repertoire. Like, he's just not mixing in secondary pitches. Bart's made it work, but I don't. When you're relying on a 88 mile an hour fastball, that's living dangerously in my world.
Yeah, that train is slowly derailing, and I mean slow as an intentional.
As in the fastball.
Yeah, as in the fastball, as in watching him run to first base and swinging a bat, as in everything about Bartolo Colon. But I'll tell you what won't be slow is the balls leaving the yard as they get hit tonight. But either way, moving on to the outfield. Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, I don't know if you've heard of them. Those guys are pretty good plays tonight and every other night against everyone. So you got to pay a lot for them. I think Harper probably a more exciting option than Trout tonight. But, of course, both guys certainly in play. I love Brett Gardner, as I always do. That ballpark, not great for home runs, like we mentioned. But Brett Gardner doesn't need a specific ballpark to pay off. I mean, he's been crushing doubles. Hasn't stolen a base in quite a while, but he does have 15 on the season steal. So he does it all. And then similar type of player, A.J. Pollock, gotta like him. More so on FanDuel where he's 3,800, but he's 48 on DraftKings. Another one of those guys who's got some power, steals bases. He's batting right near Paul Goldschmidt, which is a pretty damn good place to be as well.
Yeah, another guy that I like in the outfield, more on FanDuel than on DraftKings, is Adam Jones. 4,900 on DraftKings, much more affordable on FanDuel. Hitting number 3, I expect Martinez to get rocked tonight. The Orioles are one of my favorite stacks, so grabbing their number 3 hitters, definitely advisable. Lorenzo Cain, another guy in the same boat of like him more on FanDuel than DraftKings, but a power speed guy, gets Velasquez. Velasquez, I expect to be a little bit messy tonight. Michael Brantley, not putting up the power he did last year, but continuing to make contact a bunch. Does steal some bases. hitting third against Alex Colome. Gotta like that. Good price point on both sides, so definitely very affordable in your outfield. Alex Gordon, I wish he'd hit a little bit higher in the lineup, but even hitting sixth, I do like him against Velasquez. Gets a nice bump to power hitting at Minute Maid Park as a left-handed batter. I'm also looking at Christian Yelich, and as I noted, he is the left-handed bat that I'm most intrigued by against Heston tonight. Good lineup spot. And then Cole Calhoun, you got to get him in your lineups. Nathan Eovaldi's been lost against left-handed batters this year in his career, like forever. And then speaking of left-handed, gotta like Scott Van Slyke against a lefty. Gets to go to Chase Field and faces Robbie Ray. Should get a decent lineup spot, probably going to hit fifth or sixth. And which reminds me, guy that I like at shortstop, also outfield eligible on DraftKings. If he's in the lineup, Kike or Enrique, however you prefer, Hernandez, $2,700 on DraftKings, 23, I believe, on FanDuel, but only second base eligible there. I do like some second baseman better, but on DraftKings, if you're looking to punch shortstop, if Hernandez is in the lineup, you got to like a $2,700 price tag. Getting good ballpark factors, hits left-handed pitching pretty well. And maybe if you do really like a shortstop, you can still stick him in the outfield and save some money as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. And then when you're looking for cheap options in the outfield, you already mentioned Cole Calhoun is my favorite guy as well. You're going to hate this call, so maybe cover your ears for this one. But Dom Brown is a guy with a ton of power. Kyle Loesch, as we know, second highest home run rate in the league, except for right behind Kyle Kendrick. Dom Brown is men's salary on FanDuel, $3,800 on DraftKings. Not a huge fan of that price because there's other guys I like a lot more around there. But on FanDuel as a bare minimum punt, I mean, he's shown some discipline at the plate, walking a decent amount as well. Still not a great hitter, but he's a guy with power once he gets a hold of one. So bare minimum guy, I really like him. And then looking for a couple other guys. Chris Parmelee, of course, still in play. Yep. As he always is. He's still too cheap. DraftKings got to him a little bit. He's up to $3,400 today, but I'm certainly looking at him. And then Gerardo Parra, $2,600 on FanDuel, $35 on DraftKings, another guy I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, one more name I'll throw out there. Like him much better against lefties than righties. Hit in the top of the order, hit second last night for the Cardinals. Randall Grichuk, another guy that's putting up some monster exit velocity numbers. Checks in the top five, really hitting the ball hard. Doesn't walk a lot, strikes out quite a bit, but he's one of the few right-handed bats that I like in that Cardinals lineup. And assuming he hits second again tonight, which I think is a strong possibility, gonna like the lineup spot. So affordable option, just $3,600 on DraftKings, and checks in as a $3,500 option on FanDuel. So much pricier there.
Yeah, and I mean, he took Chris Sale deep last night, so confidence got to be riding high. I know that I'd be on top of the world if I had a home run off Chris Sale last night. So
yeah, and it was not a cheapie, man. That was in Big Mac land last night. He got into it.
Yeah, he stole the win right away from Chris Sale last night with that one. So well done to him. Congratulations. Maybe he gets a hold of one again tonight. We'll see. But either way, thanks for hanging out with us. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our great lineup optimizer, Colossus, our cheat sheets. A lot of great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.